So as I recently started plundering my bank account to buy equipment for film photography and for digital photography, my rightfully concerned family started asking questions like, why don't you just use your phone for that? Why are you spending that much money to use your grandpa's 40-year-old film camera that takes pictures with less detail than your phone? And that's all valid. But so those of you who have been around for whatever my channel has been so far probably have heard me complain about the camera on my Samsung Galaxy A71, which is weird because by the numbers it should be a fine camera. 64 megapixels as long as you're fine with not shooting RAW and with shooting in this obscenely wide angle, and 4K video. So it should be fine. Although I don't know too much about all the technology behind this, but that's not 64 megapixels, right? No way. I don't understand like sensors and shit, but that's not like, I don't know. Anyways, what I'm getting at is I upgraded my phone. The main reason for that being is I have this little contraption I can use for shooting these POV videos of how I do photography, and my Samsung just doesn't quite cut it there for me. Those of you who follow me on my Instagram or my TikTok, which you should by the way, might have seen some of those videos, and it's fine for like TikTok, but I tried using that footage in my YouTube videos and the contrast to my Sony is just too big for my taste. So when I saw the Google Pixel 8 Pro on a hefty Black Friday sale, I got it for like 45% off, I just had to go for it. My Samsung is like 4 years old now anyways, it's starting to show some signs of age, it's freezing up, and I have a friend who also has a Pixel and he really likes it, and you better be my phone for like the next 10 years, you expensive fuck. So yeah, we're gonna experiment with all that at some point, but for today the topic is actually gonna be this phone. Because as this phone is gonna move into retirement soon, I thought I should at least give it the same kind of attention that I give to all of my other cameras on my channel. Make a whole video about it. Because at the end of the day, even though I never really liked the pictures and videos out of this phone, it was still my main camera for 4 years until I bought my Sony ZV E10. And this phone has accompanied me to some of my favorite photo locations of all time. Has it done us justice? Probably not. But at the end of the day, there's some really fun memories with this camera. And maybe it even is a better camera than I thought. Hear me out. By the way, sorry if today's location is kind of boring, but I wanted to walk up this little forest there, but as I was walking I saw trees that had fallen down, and I actively heard other trees falling down over there, so I didn't really fuck with all that. Well, say goodbye to the sunlight, guys, because it is gone. Oh, I love shooting videos in winter. When I first got this phone, obviously I was a complete beginner when it comes to photography and videography. So maybe some of the lack of quality in some of those images is just more my inexperience and not really anything to do with the camera. Maybe with the way more advanced skills in photo and video editing I have now, I can just fix the things I don't like about this camera. I don't like the colors of the pictures. Well, I can just change them, and maybe because I'm now more experienced, I can just avoid some of the situations where this camera struggles. Like, it's very bad with lens flare or just shooting in the direction of the sun in general. Sometimes the entire image just turns grey. Now that I'm more experienced, I can just avoid those situations, and then those issues aren't going to be there anymore. And now that I'm more experienced in how cameras work, I find settings on this thing that I never even knew existed, and that are very helpful. What I'm getting at, maybe I gave up on this camera too early, because I wasn't getting the results out of it I wanted. But maybe if I just practiced more, I could have. Well, I think before this phone retires, I should give it one more fair chance. With all of the skills I have now and all of the experience I have now, it's gonna go up against my Sony ZV E10 and against two of my film cameras. Right now in winter I get about like 3 hours of good sunlight a day, so I had to film this video on multiple days, and I already went out and shot on my Canon A71 and on this phone, and we're gonna compare those images later. But for now, let's compare it to my Sony ZV E10 and my Voigtländer Vitomatic one, which I reviewed in the last video. I actually got this little thing here that I can use to strap my phone to the camera, and then I'm gonna take the same picture on both and we're gonna compare them. Sorry if the audio is kind of bad right now, I had to take down the microphone to be able to attach the phone. So what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna run around in front of there, taking some pictures with this camera, and I'm gonna film it on both of these cameras and we're gonna compare the footage. I think this is a good time to update you guys on the camera I'm using here as well. I first tried this camera, the Voigtländer Vitomatic 1, in my last video, and I have two little updates for you guys. Number one, that video sadly includes a translation error since I got all of my information on this camera from German manuals, which I then translated to English for the sake of the video, and unfortunately the dictionary and the translation apps I used for that purpose included an error, causing me to call this a rangefinder camera instead of a viewfinder camera, which would have been the better translation. And number two, the lab I got my film developed and scanned for that video sadly gave me lower resolution scans than I usually get. As I mentioned, I was hoping to get better scans for this video so I can actually compare the sharpness of that camera to my other film cameras, but somehow the scans I got this time are even worse. What are we even doing? The good news is now I also got a roll from my Canon A1 scanned by the same lab, so now we can compare them. They both look like ass. Great. Time to test another lab or finally get my own scanning setup. I can't wait to spend like 100 euros on some pieces of plastic to hold my film. That will be so great. Anyways, back to the Samsung Galaxy A71. Well, I just kind of showed you the footage without commenting on it too much because to me on my screen the difference between those two videos is so strong. I can barely believe that those two videos are supposed to have the same resolution and roughly the same bitrate. But the true question is this. The difference is very obvious to me in my editing software, but because I have a talent for destroying PCs and my PC blue screens whenever I try to export 4K video, and because after being exported YouTube will also mess with the video once again, reducing the quality even further with encoders and whatever happens there, the videos once they appear on your screens will look different and worse than they do for me on my screen. So how visible is this difference gonna be once the videos actually end up on the screens of the viewers? Let me know what you think of these videos. Of course, I'm also gonna watch them once they're actually on YouTube to see if anything changed throughout this whole process. Anyways, let's move on to some photography. One important thing I learned about phone photography is this. It is way easier to get distracted. When I first got my Google Pixel, of course I wanted to test the camera on it, so I went out to take some pictures. But sadly I'm also a college student and group projects exist. So while I was trying to take some pictures, multiple group projects were falling apart in the background and multiple group chats were being blown up. That really reduced the amount of fun I was having that day. With a dedicated camera, that type of distraction doesn't really happen, especially with film cameras where there's really no distraction at all. You can't even look back at the pictures you just took. But luckily, once I got around to taking the pictures on my Samsung for this video, I'd already swapped the SIM card to my new phone, which means that I wasn't able to receive any phone calls or messages while I was out there. And that was way more fun. So one big learning, if you don't like phone photography, try either using a phone that can't receive messages or that has no internet connection, or just turn on airplane mode. That helps. Well, I didn't think that through fully. Because I need my camera's hot shoe as a mount for my phone, I now don't have a microphone, so I have to use this. As you can see, the sun is already actively going down. It's 3 p.m. and it's gonna be time to stop filming, like now. So because I didn't really have that much time today, I didn't get that many pictures. I got like 3. But luckily, when I was making the video 2 videos ago where I did film photography up in the German Alps, luckily I already shot some pictures on my phone there as well because I already kind of knew that this video was gonna be made soon. So I have those as well. Hey guys, welcome to the editing zone and welcome to Affinity Photo because I'm not renting a damn computer program. This is enough for me. So 2 first little observations. Shooting on a camera like my Sony ZV E10 or like a film camera is gonna give you a lot more manual and physical controls. Physical buttons to press, physical buttons to change settings, which at least for me I find a lot more enjoyable to shoot that way rather than just tapping on a screen the whole time. Also I had to throw in a cheap zoom range shot because obviously with interchangeable lens camera you can just slap on a telephoto lens and that's it. But once again, there also is phones that have like 10 times zoom cameras. Now you may say that it is pretty unfair to compare a phone to a camera that costs about, camera and lens that together cost about like 4.5 times as much as this phone did. And yeah, that's pretty unfair. How lucky then that while I got this at a reduced price because of the sale, At its normal price, this phone costs about only like 150 euros less than my camera does. So if you think that I'm just being unfair to phones in general by using this phone for the comparison, you should tell me that in the comments below, and then I could also make a video comparing this phone to that camera. Anyways, let's get back to the comparison. So since on that day I was in a pretty boring location with pretty bad light, the pictures turned out pretty boring as well, so we're not gonna spend too much time on them, but they will help me illustrate some points I was trying to make. If we compare the JPEG straight out of camera, we can see one thing I always disliked about the pictures my phone takes. The ground looks very desaturated and kind of grayish, while the sky has this really vibrant saturated blue. The attention is almost kind of dragged away from the actual place on Earth I'm photographing and towards just like blue. There is a whole technical reason for that, and I'm not gonna get too far into it, because there's people out there who know more about digital sensors than I do and who can do a better job at explaining it. But basically, the reason why the sky looks so artificial in these pictures is because there's a bunch of internal processing happening to even be able to display the sky in these pictures. So that ends up making the sky look pretty unnatural, and I would know because I'm the expert in making the sky have colors it never has in real life. You might even enjoy that look. I know some people really enjoy this kind of artificial digital look, and I also like it whenever I use some of my old digicams like that, where I use this kind of look to achieve a certain aesthetic. But generally I'm not a big fan of this. But the question for today is, can we change that? And let's hop into the editing software. And I really put so much effort into these. So this is the raw out of my Sony. You can see really great job editing this. Put so much effort into it because it's such a great picture. Anyways, this is then from the phone, and you see what I kind of did was just remove some of the saturation from the sky, bring back some saturation into the trees and the grass, and give it some more contrast, and also adjust the white balance a bit, because I always feel like this phone is just too blue. It's just too blue for my taste. But if you compare both these pictures now, so this is from the Sony, this is from the phone, with a bit of effort put into them, we can make them look pretty much the same, which means pretty much equally boring. I believe also, depending on which camera app you're using, there's also some stuff you can do to get rid of some of those effects in the phone right as you're taking the pictures, but the camera apps I'm using don't have that, so we're not gonna get into that. Luckily, on the day I was comparing this phone to my Canon A1, I had way more interesting conditions, so let's jump to that. This has to be the single most goofy setup ever. Look at this over there though, wait. Oh. Yes, I have a zoom lens now. Look at this. I mean, it's gonna be hard to make that look bad. So for the segment, I will first show you the film picture, then the JPEG straight out of the phone, and then my best attempt at editing the RAW file from the phone to make it look like I would want it to look. And don't compare the resolution of the film pictures to the phone pictures. Obviously, the resolution is way worse, but it's more so because of the scans I got and not because of the camera itself. The better the scans, the better the resolution is gonna look, that's just a thing. But that's one upside of using the phone. There is no need for any development or scanning. You may want to edit the picture afterwards, but generally, once you press the shutter button, you have the picture, and there's nothing that could go wrong afterwards. What I prefer about a film camera though, for one, of course, the physical controls, but also the viewfinder. I mean, if you ever tried using a phone while the sun exists, you're gonna know that sometimes you just don't see anything, and it happens to me so often when I try to do pictures with my phone, and really also with my Sony ZV E10, which also doesn't have a viewfinder, that I get home from a shoot and I look at the pictures on my screen and I see things that I didn't even see while I was shooting, because there was some sun reflection happening. At this point there probably is some sort of attachment that you can attach to your phone, and then you have some sort of viewfinder as well, but there's no way anybody's using that. And also just the experience of using a film camera is so much more fun. Give me a camera that feels like a fidget spinner to use, and I'm happy. And just tapping on the screen isn't gonna give you that same sort of experience as actually pressing the physical buttons and rewinding the film and doing all of this cool stuff. Which pictures you prefer, I'm gonna leave up to you, because that's really a subjective taste kind of thing, I think. For me, the JPEGs straight out of the phone are really bad, but the edited RAWs are pretty good, I think, and I can't really say which ones I prefer. The
film pictures or the edited RAWs, because the scans are just so bad that film pictures just look so much worse than what I'm used to out of this camera. I think they look pretty similar though, and the fact that I edited my RAW files to look similar to what the film camera is already giving me is a pretty good sign that that camera is up to something.
Well guys, you know what time it is? It's 4 PM, so time for the sun to set. Well, I guess we go home now.
Okay, so let's get to some of the pictures I shot while I was shooting the video I uploaded 2 videos ago, I think now, where I did film photography up in the Alps. So now I'm gonna show you the film picture, then the picture from my Sony ZV E10, and then the picture from my phone. And I think what we should consider here is what I already kind of said in that video. The reason why I really wanted to use this camera in that type of environment is for the fun of it. And I think in terms of the pictures I was taking, I would have been happy with only shooting with my Sony as well. The reason why I wanted to shoot on this was because of the experience of actually using this camera, which, as I already said, is just better. I'm not gonna get too deep into that because you should watch that video if you haven't watched it yet. And subscribe. There's 2 more things we can kind of tell from these pictures though. So one thing I want to talk about is camera honesty, is what I'm gonna call it, which is basically just this picture, which I took on my phone to send it to my grandpa, who, as you guys know, gifted me this camera, and I wanted to show him what his camera is up to. I was shooting the camera kind of in front of the environment and the sun was in the background, and I was expecting the sun to be blown out because that's what happened, but I don't know what the phone did here. I don't know if this is like a lens flare, probably. I think it looks like it's some sort of computational thing. Either way, it looks weird, and I think that's what I want to call a camera honesty. Like, a phone is gonna try to make the best out of anything you give it. So it's gonna do all of those computational things in the background to try to make the picture look good. Even if the picture you're taking is just gonna have a spot that's gonna be too bright because you're shooting in the direction of the sun. This isn't gonna do that. If you're shooting in the direction of the sun with this camera, it's gonna say, what are you doing? You know I can't do that. And then it's gonna give you a picture with just a big bright spot, because that's what happens if you shoot into the sun. A phone is gonna try to do its best to kind of mask around it, and you might like that because it's making it easier for you, and it's kind of less punishing to shoot in situations that a camera just doesn't perform well in, like shooting into the direction of the sun. But you may also dislike it, and I think I'm on the side of disliking it, because this kind of weird effect there around the sun just makes this picture kind of unusable in my eyes. I would never post it outside of a family group chat. One point towards the phone though is that on this picture right here, for example, as I told you in that video, there was this weird sort of hazing effect on my film pictures where certain spots just kind of look very grayish, and there wasn't too much I was able to do there in editing as well to kind of save that. I don't know why this happened, but on the phone that didn't happen, and that's why, for example, this picture, I may almost prefer the phone version of it just because it doesn't have this real weird haze. And that's something where, if you're doing film photography, something like this may just happen and you get the scans back like 2 weeks later and there's nothing you can do about it. That's just how the picture is now. I guess also a point of honesty, because there's really no way to hide some of the things that are just gonna happen when you do film photography, some of the things that are gonna go wrong. But you may not like that, and I don't like that either when I get pictures back that suck. I don't think these pictures suck, but they're worse than I would expect them to be.
I always find it pretty funny when I see content on social media that's talking about like phone versus real camera, because this is as real as a camera as you're gonna get. In fact, really the only reason why I bought this was for the camera. Yes, my Samsung was freezing up pretty often now, but for what I usually use a phone for, scrolling on Instagram, reading text messages, checking my emails, like it had at least another year in it. But the reason why I wanted to buy this was, and just a tree falling down. But the reason I wanted to buy this was for the camera, because a camera that is so small, so compact, so easy to carry around, and you always have it with you, is so great, especially for like making YouTube videos, where I often talked about like I don't like carrying around my whole tripod and big ass camera every time I want to shoot something for my Instagram or YouTube. Having a camera now that I can hopefully use to make social media content that is always with me and that doesn't require me to carry multiple cameras if I want to make a camera review all the time. I'm still going to use it a lot, obviously, but this enables me to do what I did in this video and shoot on multiple different days and not have to carry around my whole equipment every time.
One more thing I did for this video is I thought it would be nice to go back to some of the pictures I shot on this phone a few years back and try to re-edit them to make them look like what I would want them to look now. Because back then I either didn't do really any editing at all, or I just kind of increase the contrast a bit more saturation, and that's it. But now with a bit more editing skills, I think I can do some stuff to those to make them better. So we're gonna start with these pictures right here that I already also talked about in the video where I was doing film photography in the Alps. And as I talked about in that video, this is from a while back when I didn't have any of my cameras yet, so I was doing pretty much a very similar photo trip with my phone. And the pictures there ended up looking so bad that I just kind of gave up on photography with my phone because I hated those pictures so much. And from that point on, really, I barely took any pictures. Pretty much the only pictures you're gonna see here is ones that I took on kind of family summer vacations, which is the only time I would ever really do photography, because I would just be in nice spots, right, on the beach or something like that. Looks nice, so I want to take a picture of it. But that's pretty much the only time when I did photography from that point on. And I tried if I could do some editing work to try to save them, you know, bring back some of the saturation, contrast. Not all too much that could be done here. Those pictures, even with editing, I don't really like. I don't know what I was up to on that day. But I wasn't too great either, but I don't know. Even with editing, I wasn't really able to do much with those. So might just have been a bad photo trip in general. I don't know. But I'm gonna show you some of those other pictures from some summer vacations as well that I edited. Well, what is the moral of this video? I didn't go into this kind of wanting to prove a point or having a script of what I was gonna say now at the end of the video. This is really just more of an experiment for me as well, and there's a lot more experimentation that's gonna need to be done with this phone. And if you guys like this video, I would definitely be down to make more content on the topic of phone photography and videography in the future as well. So as a camera collector of sorts, I definitely understand wanting to have a real camera and not wanting to use your phone. Whether that is for the manual controls, for better image quality, just kind of the aesthetic and look that film or a bigger digital sensor is gonna give you, or just for the fun of using the camera. But here's the thing, I didn't have all of these cameras before April of this year. April of this year I got my Sony ZV E10, which started off my kind of camera collection journey, and I got my first film camera in summer of this year. So this is all a pretty new thing for me. Before all of that happened, I was using this webcam to record most of my videos, and I was using my phone sometimes as well for the photos I've shown you and for videos whenever I wanted to record content outside, because with this I need to be connected to a computer, which doesn't work outside. But I definitely didn't use my phone as a camera a lot for many of the years I had it. But now that I actually have some of the great cameras I wanted to have back then, I actually kind of regret not using this more, because I never really fully used my phone to learn a lot of things about photography and videography. Many things like, for example, color grading, I never even really bothered to learn before getting my Sony, because that's the first time I felt like I could get a result that I would actually like. But I regret that now, because it slowed down my process of learning all of those things so much. And a part of me now thinks that if I was able to get videos and photos out of my phone that I liked before getting this camera, just imagine what I'd be able to do now with this. You know, a bunch of things I only really bothered to start learning once I got my hands on the good cameras. But I could have used this to learn those beforehand to really get the most out of those cameras once I got them. So I guess the message of this video kind of is, if you want a real camera, go for it, absolutely go for it. Be smart with your budget, keep your budget in mind, maybe see if maybe some family member still has something lying around that they don't use anymore. That could be great, but absolutely go for it. But before you get to that point, use whatever you have available to you right now. So that could be your phone, that could be an old digital cam like that, which probably many families still have. And you may not fully like the results you're gonna get out of those, but many of the skills you can learn with a phone are gonna translate super well, and that's gonna enable you to really get the most out of your dream camera once you get it. And if you're anything like me, you're gonna regret not starting to learn earlier. Having skills is never something you're gonna regret. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and definitely let me know down in the comments below what you think about kind of the pictures and videos I showed you in this video. If you think the phone is good enough, or do you really think that I didn't make a completely wrong investment with this camera? I know I didn't, but what do you think? Leave a like if you like this video. Let me know down below if you want to see some more content about the topic of phone photography and phone videography. And you know, if you don't have a camera like this right now, but you want to create, just take whatever you have and go ahead and create. Because even though maybe the results aren't gonna be the greatest, you're really not gonna regret it, kind of building up those skills. And I hope for you that later on you're gonna get your hands on that dream camera of yours. But once you have it, you're gonna need to know how to use it. And that's something you can already learn right now. So get to it. Anyways, subscribe to that channel. Stay tuned for the next video, which is gonna be a video where I'm gonna talk about some stuff.